This is part 2 and a continuation of the training for the employee handbook. We are continuing on page 29, and we were discussing or ended at discussing documentation of activity. So just as a repeat, here on page 29, we are discussing that the employee must complete uh, written documentation of the time that they spent servicing an individual, meaning servicing a client. Documentation forms are required and mandatory, and also indicate that an employee has worked. Failure to complete proper documentation of time work can and will result in non-pay and voids work activity. Documentation must be reflective on company and state service logs. These forms are a part of the employee's timesheet. So in reference to, I'm going to give an example again of what those service logs look like for individuals that are being serviced in the group home setting. We are referencing these residential support or supervised living service delivery logs. They pretty much look the same for individuals who are also in the host home setting, and we have a training that discusses which sections need to be filled out. Definitely in particular for staff to initial the day that they provided service for the client as indicated here. So we are referencing this form as a service delivery log that also needs to be completed. And for individuals who again are working in the group home setting, we are referencing the online daily summary as a drop down, for what the staff needs to complete when they are working with the individuals in the group home setting. So again, not only do you need to clock in and clock out, but there are forms that need to be completed that indicates that you actually work with that individual. On that service, on this online form, in the section here, we're talking about providing a detailed summary of the time. We're talking about this section, providing a detailed summary of the time you spent working with the individual. So this part of the handbook is giving you an example of how your documentation should be written. So here, talking about staff documentation, it can be something as simple as what is written here, because this simplicity also demonstrates that it is simple and it is detailed. It is straight to the point. So I observed Johnny at the 7-Eleven. He selected 3 items to purchase and approached the register, greeted the cashier, and received the total for his purchase. The purchase was $3.42. Johnny presented the cashier with $3. Staff prompted Johnny to give the cashier an additional $1. The purchase was then complete. And so again, it gives you, detailed information that this example indicates that Johnny is able to perform many of the steps associated with making a purchase, but he was not completely independent in making the purchase. The program provider is responsible, and that means responsible for comparing staff documentation to determine if Johnny's abilities have increased, or must document the lack of progress. So this portion here really refers back to the case manager, because the case manager does review your forms so that we can find out whether or not an individual is making progress, or if there's a lack of progress, meaning that we need to change and do something different to help this individual become more independent in their day-to-day activities. So that there are some additional examples as you go on to page 30, as well, some additional examples on how to document and why we are documenting. Page 31 talks about the provider obligations and the rights of the individual. These are really in reference to individuals who are being served in the Home and Community-Based Services Program, as well as the Texas Home Living Program. There are about 44 different rights, and they're just essentially reminders of the things that individuals who are participating in the program have the right to do. So, for an example, you'll see on here that an individual, number 10, has the right to have privacy in visitation with family and other visitors. They have the right to make and receive telephone calls, the right to send and receive sealed and uncensored mail, the right to attend religious activities of choice, and the list continues on. So also, like number 15, to be free from the use of unauthorized restraints. And then it just again goes on. These are rights that they really point out that the state um, implemented, because these are rights that any person that may not be in this type of program would receive if they did not have a disability. So this is implemented to stop, in a sense, individuals from being discriminated against based on them having a disability. So you'll see that they have the right to vote, they have the right to have guardians, they have the right to receive counseling concerning money, and then be involved in anything that is pertaining to their care. So any decision making, any meetings, they have the right to be involved in that. And not only do they have the right, they can include having their LAR involved in it, and this means their legal authorized representative or their guardian. So there's about 44 rights that the individuals, that, or at least that the state points out that the individuals have. If the individual does feel like their rights are being violated, they are to be informed. We have to inform them that they can call DADS, which is now HHSC, but the Office of Consumer Rights and Services, to initiate a complaint. This is something that the state as well as our agency takes very serious, because we do not want to be in violation of not providing or not adhering to a person's rights. Page 35 talks about our dress code policy. And this applies, to everyone pretty much in the organization. So depending on your role, and we're talking about, coming into the office setting when we're having staff meetings, you are expected to be in business casual. So you'll see here, so employees are expected to dress in business casual attire unless the day requires something different. Sometimes you'll see us in jeans and a t-shirt as well. But in the setting of the group home, or if you're doing hospital sitting or respite for a community first choice, then it's casual dress or hospital scrubs. We want to make sure that employees are always presented clean, professional appearance. So being well groomed and clean, and clothes are free of holes, tears, and other signs of wear. This is extremely important for our individuals who provide hospital sitting services, because again, we are working with other professionals, so we want to be we want to demonstrate that we are professionals as well. So no head scarves, no heads wrapped up, no house shoes, no pajamas, no things like that. So again, professional dress. As you continue on in this page, it does give you definitions of exactly what different types of dress is. So business casual dress, and what we mean by business casual, what we mean by casual dress, smart casual, and then business dress code. On page 37 is our policy on acknowledging transportation of clients. We do not do mileage reimbursement. for transporting unless you have transported a client within a 100-mile radius. If you have transported more than 100 miles, then it is 55.5% for those business miles. But the reason we don't do transportation or reimbursement for miles for transportation is because we do have a company vehicle. That leads us to a discussion about our driver's policy and making sure that, one, if you are driving the company vehicle or even your own vehicle, you are required to have a valid Texas driver's license and maintain a clean driving record as well. If you are driving your own vehicle as well as driving the company's vehicle, you are required to have an insurance policy. That insurance policy must have you designated as a driver of a vehicle that you own and or use. So just really simple, any employee driving a company vehicle or driving on company business must observe all safety, traffic, and criminal laws of this state, which is the state of Texas. No driver may consume alcohol or illegal drugs while driving a company vehicle, while on company business, while in a company vehicle, or prior to the employee's shift. So again, no drugs, no alcohol, especially, and this is not just as it pertains to the driver's policy, but obviously no drugs or alcohol associated with your shift before or after. The rest of this is also pretty self-explanatory, and individuals sign off that they do receive, that they've received a copy of what our driver's policy actually is. So the vehicle policy in reference to the actual company vehicle, we do have a company vehicle as stated that is used for individuals being serviced in the group home setting. We do use that vehicle to take care of our individuals' needs, so taking them back and forth to different appointments, including but not limited to doctor's appointments. So again, the policy on that is here and stated as follows. Again, the company rules is, obeying traffic laws, documenting your driving expense, meaning that you're going to be also documenting when you put gas into the vehicle, as well as documenting your mileage to and from where you have transported a client to. You are required to monitor the gas, the tire pressure, and all fluid levels. Report any damage or problems to your assigned vehicle immediately. Report changes to your driver's privilege, such as if your license becomes suspended, and doing that immediately. Also, locking the car, bringing the vehicle to the scheduled maintenance appointments, and we're referencing, oil changes and things like that. Typically, when we do oil changes, we have staff to let the individuals accommodate them in doing that, because that is a learning experience for them, and it shows them also how to be active and independent in the community. Obviously, no smoking or no driving the vehicle when you are feeling intoxicated, fatigued, or on medication that affects your driving ability. We also prohibit you from using your phone or texting while driving. And if you are going to be, texting or on the phone while in the vehicle, you are required to pull over to stop and do that. You should be at a complete stop in a safe area in doing that. We do not allow unauthorized drivers to use the company vehicle unless required by an emergency, and that is a verifiable emergency. So individuals who violate company policy rules are subject to disciplinary actions, which may include verbal and written warning, suspension of vehicle privilege, termination, and legal action. there is a piece here that talks about, if you have an accident, what to do. You are to contact your supervisor basically immediately and follow the guidelines for exchanging information with the other drivers and report the accident to the local police if that is required. We do not guarantee payment or accept responsibility without without company authorization. So even if that means, oh, hey, I ran into the back of somebody, we're not accepting responsibility without company authorization. This discuss, what we are not responsible for. So while driving, if you incur a fine, we will not pay fines that employees receive while driving a company vehicle. They are responsible for that. And making bail for employees who are arrested while driving a company vehicle, we are not responsible for that. So this also includes tollway fines as well. So if you are a person who's driving a company vehicle and use the tollway, then you are responsible for the fees associated with the tollway. Smoking policy. Individuals who do smoke cigarettes or e-cigarettes, pipes, or things like that, let me go back to say no smoking or other use of tobacco or similar products, are permitted during any time during the workday or while on company business, while in transit between work location assignments. So while at a client's location or any part of the building within 10 feet. So you're not supposed to smoke during company time. We don't have any designated smoking areas in particular when it comes to the group home setting. But if you are in the company's building, there is a designated smoking area for individuals. Most importantly, though, in this policy, employees may not have the smell of tobacco smoke on their persons during work hours or while on company business. Okay? You can read the remainder of that policy. Drug-free workplace as well. So we obviously, prohibit the use or the possession or solicitation or sale of narcotics or other illegal drugs, alcohol, or prescription medication without a prescription on company or customer premises while performing an assignment. So most importantly, we obviously it's prohibited to do those things while on company time. We also do perform random testing of drugs. So random testing, employees may be selected at random for drugs and or alcohol testing at any interval determined by the company. And then there's other additional information about the policy on drug testing. We also have an agreement with you guys or with employees that does give us the authorization to complete drug testing. Okay. Right here, I am going to give you the third statement word. And the third statement word is the word great. Great. G-R-E-A-T. Great. Page 47 is our policy on harassment and disrespect towards others. To promote equal employment opportunities for all employees, the Willis Group strives to maintain an atmosphere of mutual respect and understanding in the workplace. So towards that end, the Willis Group considers the use of demeaning, belittling, humiliating, insulting, and other forms of disrespectful language towards or about yourself or others as unacceptable. So an individual can't, this really goes to that idea that, if you're humiliating or using insulting words, an individual cannot go into the defense that, oh, I was talking about myself, because our policy does indicate that you cannot um, use demeaning, belittling, humiliating, insulting, or other forms of disrespect about yourself or other individuals. We have a zero tolerance policy for that. There are also some examples to illustrate what is unacceptable under this policy, and this list does not include every, obviously, example that can be used or that we are referring to, but here are some examples of what we're referring to. So again, we want to try to stay away from that because it does maintain a positive professional environment. Page 48, confidentiality of information. Again, we want to make sure that we are maintaining confidentiality, especially as it pertains to the individuals that we are servicing, making sure that their information is secure and that we are not in violation uh, of revealing any information that might be medically related or even behaviorally related. So again, medical information as being confidential information, and there is policy. So you are encouraged to read this policy thoroughly and making sure that you understand our policy on confidentiality. Social media policy. This is also a very big policy, as the times have truly changed with regards to social media and the amount of avenues that individuals can share things with the world. And so we understand that social media can be a fun and rewarding way to share your life and opinion with families, friends, and coworkers around the world. However, the use of social media also prevents or presents certain risks and carries with it certain responsibilities. So for us, we do not, in a nutshell, want individuals that we service shared on social media by our staff. For individuals, obviously, who are in like a host home setting, these individuals, parents may decide that they want to, share things on social media. But as far as individuals who service our clients that are in the hospital setting, our clients that are in the group home setting, day have setting, we are not, as a company, given permission unless it is a written consent by the client, his or herself, or that client's guardian or legal authorized representative to share things about them on social media. So make sure that you carefully read these guidelines and that you understand, because there is a zero tolerance policy with regards to social media. This does include not just actually posting it on social media, but this is taking pictures, sending text messages, things like that are included in this policy. I will say and add that the company does have a social media page, a Facebook page, where we do share information or post, not necessarily post information about clients or individuals, but we do highlight things that are happening in the organization. So if you have something that you definitely want to highlight about an individual, I would definitely encourage you to send that posting to your supervisor, and that way we can share it on maybe the company's social media page, because as a company we do get permission from the individuals that we service so that we can post as a company on social media. So one way, to satisfy that urge to do it, if you feel like you want to post, on social media, is that we can post it for you, if it is appropriate, and we can also tag you in that post. So again, just be very mindful of the policy, and read the policy thoroughly. Page 53, and as we are getting ready to wrap up this training for our company handbook, our last policies sort of kind of discuss discipline. And so with individuals, we are hoping to, stay away from having, to discipline individuals, but unfortunately that does happen at times. So the purpose of this policy is to state the Willis Group's position on administering equitable and consistent discipline for unsatisfactory conduct in the workplace. So as we go through the discipline procedures, we basically are pointing out and highlighting what things constitute action or a need for disciplinary action. And we also have different methods of how we do that. So disciplinary action may call for 4 steps, and that might be a verbal warning, a written warning, suspension with or without pay, or termination of employment. And of course, these depend on the severity of the problem and the number of occurrences. There may be circumstances when one or more steps are bypassed, again, based on the severity and the number of occurrences that this has happened. So we do practice progressive discipline, and that means that with respect to most disciplinary problems, these steps will be normally followed, meaning the first offense may call for a verbal warning, a next offense may be followed by a written warning, another offense may lead to suspension, and still another offense may lead to a termination of employment. So we do recognize that there are certain type of employee problems that are serious enough to justify either a suspension or, in extreme situations, termination of employment without going through the usual progressive discipline steps. By using the progressive discipline, we hope that most employee problems can be corrected at an early stage, because this does benefit both the employee and the company. Just keeping in mind, employment with the company is on an at-will basis and may be terminated voluntarily or involuntarily at any time. So, upon termination, an employee is required to continue to work until the last scheduled day of employment, to turn in all reports and paperwork, and this is very important for us. You are required to turn in all reports and paperwork. This again does mean that we are going back to check if things like this service log has been complete, and most importantly, that your initials are there and your signature is here. We will be checking those things at any time that an employee separates from the company, because again, this is a time sheet and it indicates that the work has been performed. So these things must be signed in order for us to close out a business with you. And it needs to be done no later than the last day of work. You also are required to return all files, documents, equipment, keys, access cards, software, and other property belonging to the company that are not in the employee's possession, custody, or control, and turn in all passwords to your supervisor. And then you also may be required to participate in an exit interview as requested. Okay, let's talk about some posted offenses, some things that definitely can result in disciplinary procedures. Obviously, things like theft of property from the company or other associates, drinking alcoholic beverages, or the use of illegal drugs on company premises, assault on a supervisor, intentionally punching another associate's time card, meaning signing in for someone else, um, possession of weapons or firearms, threatening other associates or supervisors, fighting or attempting to provoke a fight, removal of company records. Again, this is also very, very important, and a zero tolerance policy. This is something that may not result in a progressive disciplinary process, but an immediate termination. So, removal of company records or release of confidential or proprietary information, gaining access to electronic resources or other confidential information without proper authorization or for the purpose other than legitimate business. So again, this could be as it pertains to someone's personnel file, getting access to that, which we keep locked, but in the case of that potentially happening, that would be a cause, again, for someone to be potentially immediately terminated or severely disciplined. Here are some additional discipline and warning procedures that we try to follow in terms of making things progressive. Again, about your first offense, second, third, fourth, and fifth offense. So again, we're following our progressive disciplinary procedures and how we handle these types of things. And again, these are examples. These are in reference to, having consideration to severity and the number of times these things have been violated or practiced, should I say. So, we're talking about terminating on page 56, and this is the final page. But terminations are and can be involuntary as well as voluntary. So falling into these two categories, when it's involuntary, terminations resulting from employment problems such as unsatisfactory performance, excessive absenteeism, or tardiness or poor attitude. Employees with such problems are typically not terminated by the employer without being given a warning of their performance deficiencies and an opportunity to improve. Terminations resulting from more serious type of employee offenses such as insubordination, dishonesty, misconduct, theft, unethical practices, fraud, and falsification of records. Employees who commit such offenses will be discharged without warning. Then we have involuntary termination. The company recognizes that personal situations may arise which would require voluntary termination of employment. And I want to say I may have just said involuntary, but I meant to say this is voluntary. Should this occur, the company requests that an employee provide at least a 2-week advance noting in writing. And I will say that a lot of the reason that this is important for us is if you really do genuinely care about the work that it is that we perform and the populations that we service. This is very important. It's very important for the individuals that we service because it means that a change is getting ready to occur in that individual life. Being that the population that we work with tend to become very attached to the individuals that service them, we try to prepare those individuals for a change that's happening. So if you will give us at least a 2-week notice, that way we can also, again, prepare that individual. This request does not alter an employee's at-will relationship with the company. So all rights and privileges of employment with the company terminate upon the date of separations. Employees are required, again, to return all company property assigned to them, and failure to do so may result in the withholding of their final check. So again, this is really referring to making sure that all your paperwork is complete, because if it is not complete, we don't have a true indication that this work was performed, and therefore a final check would be questionable as to how many hours or what work actually was performed. So final paycheck. Employees who terminate employment with the company will be given their final paycheck as required by law. Final pay. Our final payroll is not processed as direct deposits, and should the employee become unable to personally to retrieve their check, it will be mailed to the address on file. So again, making sure that you are updating your address as it changes, not only for your final paycheck, but also updating it for tax purposes at the end of the year or the first of the year. And then finally, exit interview. Again, the company may request an exit interview upon notice of termination. The purpose of the exit interview is to complete necessary forms. So if we do find that this form in particular has not been completed, we will have those forms ready for you to sign off on, to initial and to sign off on, so that you have completed your final paperwork. So exit interview is for completing necessary forms, collecting company property that includes keys, passwords, things like that that was previously discussed. So collect company property and discuss employment experiences with the company. Of course, we want to have a conversation about the employment experience, because we are always striving to do things better. To receive feedback from the individuals who are definitely out there performing work on our behalf. This wraps up the information and the training in reference to the company handbook. If there are questions that you have, you may definitely contact your supervisor. If you are comfortable also enough, you can provide feedback online to your supervisors about this training and any other trainings. So again, when we provide that information online, you can simply go to the company's website at thewillardsgrouphh.com, and from that website, you are able to go to our contact us page. And I am showing you this here in the training on how to give feedback about this training. So contact us. Computer's running slow today. I'm going to try a second. Okay. So contact us. Scroll to the bottom of the page as you see here, and you can provide right here, as it says, staff feedback. Staff feedback form looks like it is a Google document form. And on our staff feedback form, we would love to hear your thoughts or feedback on how we can improve your experience. And so you can, leave comments as it pertains to the handbook. You can also have suggestions as well, your name and the date, and then simply submit this form. So we do welcome feedback. There also will be a link in the email that is shared with you, so that you can provide to us what the statement is that you heard during this training.